Mr. Tonzini, do we have any registered speakers tonight? No one registered. We have no registered speakers, but as is our past practice, I will open up to the floor. If anybody wishes to speak, please raise your hand. One here, we'll go two over there.
John Lolli, speaking as president of South Brunswick Education Association. The last two board meetings, board officer Mr. St. Vincent asked for facts, proof. He said he was tired of the rumor. He said that all of this contributed to the poison and cancer of what's going on. And as a good mock trial teacher, I've decided to bring evidence tonight, as you've asked. That's what I've provided the board with. The SBEA continues to have serious and growing concerns about the degrading climate of the South Brunswick School District and the contentious relationship that exists between the association and our superintendent. Over the last 20 months, our organization has had an unprecedented number of conflicts with district leadership. I will highlight several of these most egregious this evening in an effort to show how they have directed our membership. On January 28, 2015, Superintendent Jellig sent an email to the high school staff that expressed his disappointment with SBEA leadership for not agreeing to his terms during negotiations. This was a blatant attempt to have SBEA members question their union leadership. He broke the confidentiality by revealing information about those negotiations to SBEA members and defiled the collective bargaining process, which requires him to work only with union leadership and the negotiations team. For the board, this is the memo from Dr. Jellig, January 28, 2015. I highlighted the appropriate portions. My disappointment for the children is in two people and entities. First, myself, regarding himself, Dr. Jellig, and second, SBEA leadership who weren't able to make the case for this. Later in the following paragraph, he says, and to be clear about what we're discussing and for accounting and equity's sake, he goes into how much money he was willing to offer teachers to take on a 7th assignment. That would basically be similar to during negotiations, me telling Dr. Parker and Mr. Boyle, I'm going to call the other board members at home and see if I can get a better deal with them instead of dealing with you. That's what he did with my members on that day when he sent this email to the entire staff. He also included, lastly, I would tell you that the Board of Education was enthusiastic about this, so disappointment abounds. So now he's telling my members that the Board of Education is also disappointed in my membership. He, in the end, then suggests that we could provide a service that is not easily replicated in the marketplace. He's talking about teaching, especially by an online solution, which some have suggested. Basically telling my membership that they can be replaced by an online solution if they don't agree. This was the first time that our trust was broken. Let's fast forward to October 6, 2015, this time when South Brunswick High School, this is when the high school sets their schedule for extracurriculars. The district charges $25 fee for club participation, but what they have failed to tell the public is that prior to the 2014-15 school year, not all teachers were given stipends for certain clubs. They were considered volunteer. So basically the district was collecting $25 per student and no charge to the district. Now, shortly after this, high school principal Peter Varela informed SBEA that 5 clubs would be cut. I provide you the second piece of information I've given you, clubs and stipends from Peter Varela. His words, we will be eliminating 5 clubs this year. Unfortunately, we feel that this decision could have been avoided if there were more positive support from SBEA on this topic. The issue at hand involves the decision to pay a number of club advisors half stipends this year. Dr. Jellig and I met with your SBEA president last week, and we offered to add $5,000 to the account this year. By adding these funds, it would have allowed us to pay those club advisors who were slated to be paid half stipends, full stipends, and we also offered to add a number of non-contractual clubs. In the following paragraph, he talks again about the terms of this negotiation, where what he wanted in return for this $5,000 is to eliminate the activity rating sheet from the contract, which is the only thing that assures that club stipends are paid to their advisors. So basically, that would eliminate any protection in the contract for club advisors to be paid. That was the deal that was made. But he continues to tell us what he assured us of, which is that there would be a 3-person committee that would include the principal, Peter Varela, the activities coordinator, Gina Welsh, and 1 other staff member. Not a teacher, another staff member. 2 votes to 1. How do we think those votes would have went if clubs were being cut? Our hope, he continues to say, our hope is that you discuss this proposal with your leadership so that your voices are heard. Students will be very upset when they are told that we had to cut these clubs. And teachers slated to receive half stipends will lose the money they were going to get. So now he's telling us that we're the bad guy, that the students are going to lose out on these clubs because we didn't agree to his terms, and that all of you should come and tell me that I should negotiate. Okay. Shortly thereafter, also in October, 2 SBA members were called to the board office by Dr. Jellig. He lectured them about comments they had made during an SBA meeting. Dr. Jellig had no right to question them. He chose to ignore the laws that protect association members from retribution while they're performing their union duties. In addition, he wrote a formal reprimand and copied their principal, the assistant superintendent, the human resources director, director of assessment and evaluation, and the director of professional development. Why any of these employees were copied on this email that wasn't a reprimand, in Dr. Jellig's opinion, was sent to all of these people to let them know of the discussion that he had with SBA members doing their SBA jobs. It was a simple intimidation tactic, and that's what it was. The association has filed an unfair labor practice pertaining to this matter, and it will be heard next week, and a resolution will be forthcoming. Our parties, meaning SBA and the Board of Education, have 2 unresolved grievances and 1 unfair labor practice pending in arbitration as well. Later this year, SBA will be heard on these 2 separate grievances involving parent-teacher conferences. It is regrettable at this time that when district spending is already being questioned, that our recent negotiations with the Board of Education fell apart. A ruling in SBA's favor will cost the district in the neighborhood of $140,000 because we couldn't come to terms. Dr. Jellig and the Board of Education have left us no choice, as we could not reach an agreement recently that would have cost the district absolutely nothing based on the proposal that SBEA gave. That unfortunately was rejected. Our gravest concern is the perpetration of the negative culture in our schools. This involves serious allegations that go beyond staff morale and lack of trust. In the last 18 months, I've been called into many conversations with female building reps, secretaries, paraprofessionals, and teachers about the considerable discomfort that they have performing their jobs every day. These women have been the recipients of tasteless comments, uncomfortable text messages, intrusions of personal space, and inappropriate advances. They believe there will be no consequences given to their offenders from district leadership. They fear they will be blamed and retaliated against. They feel they must continue to work in an awkward and distressing environment with no relief. They have endured these incidents because they need their jobs. SBA will not stand by while the inappropriate treatment of female employees by their superiors continues. The association is in the process of working with NJEA to build a network of support and secure relief for a growing number of our members involved in this type of scenario. The Board of Education ultimately bears a responsibility for monitoring the health of the district. At the last BOE meeting, Mr. St. Vincent speculated about the resignations of Ms. Kirkus and Mr. Tonzini and made the following statement. Are there people that Dr. Jellig rubs elbows with or who don't appreciate the new constraints they're put under? Or maybe he's watching them a little bit more than they had at some point in the past. Maybe he's holding them to a new criteria. Maybe. I don't know. All we can do as a board is monitor what's going on. His comments suggest that Joanne Kirkus and Anthony Tonzini were just getting by under Dr. McCartney, and that Dr. Jellig has some new criteria that they couldn't meet. It's a slap in the face of Anthony Tonzini and Joanne Kirkus. Mr. Nathanson then gave a list of 6 former employees that left the district as an example of how a recent administrative flight is not out of the ordinary. He named Willa Spicer and John Longo, who left in 2003. That was before Dr. McCartney took office. Jeff Scott left in 2006, 3 years later. George Scott left in 2007, John Heyman in 2008, and quite frankly, I couldn't find when Dave Kaplan left because he had just taken over for someone else and was let go. So that was 6 board office employees over the course of 6 years, and I'm not good at math, but that's 1 per year. Now, in the last 18 months, Mr. Tonzini, Ms. Kirkus, Ms. Disler, and John Bruff, 4 employees over 18 months, and all during 1 superintendent's tenure, not 2. Mr. Delgado recognized the severity of this issue and talked about implementing exit interviews and a succession plan. SBEA is extremely grateful that at least 1 board member has recognized the severity of this issue and has expressed concern. Please ask yourself, if these employees are leaving as a result of the culture of the board office, do you want this administration determining your succession plan? Let's talk about why that would be concerning. A committee was created to determine the next professional development director. Has this board ever questioned that committee as to who was recommended for the position, and was that committee's voice heard? Dr. Jellig wrote an email to the district on February 27, 2016. This is the 3rd email that I've provided you with. It's called Personnel Updates 222, Personnel Updates, February 22nd. Mary Beth will head to Black Horse Lane in a couple weeks and begin formally on July 1st. I will remind this board that the assistant superintendent position was never posted, nor did any interview take place when Dr. Jellig made this proclamation. He didn't follow the contract of all South Brunswick associations, specifically mine as one example. Article 13, Section C and D. Every teacher who applies for a position, including one on the supervisory or administrative level, who possesses the education, certification, and prior experience requirements for the position, shall be given consideration in the appointment process. He continued in that email to say, I have felt and continue to feel that an internal candidate works best where practicable. There are so many relationships to forge and schools to learn. An outsider would take 2 years to get up to speed, and that's not in the best interest of children. How are we going to ever attract external candidates if this is the philosophy of our school, that we are not even going to post or interview for those positions? The breaches of trust, the climate of decay, and the conflicts that have occurred in just 20 short months make it difficult for SBEA to work with Dr. Jellig in any meaningful way. It is equally as difficult to understand why the Board of Education continues to offer explanations and excuses on his behalf.
As I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, we cannot talk about personnel issues or pending litigation. That doesn't mean we don't hear what's going on, we don't see what's going on, but we do not and we cannot talk about them in a public meeting. And you put us at a great disadvantage when you come up here, John, and make those statements, knowing that we cannot respond to you. I responded because people asked for more information about the project, and I gave more information on the project. I did not talk about personnel. I did not talk about pending litigation, because we cannot do that.
And I agree with you, and I certainly appreciate the civility of the arguments here and the information with us. Let's not talk about personnel, because I believe that Mr. Lolli and everybody here understands that we can't do that. But certainly we have some questions about process. And I think that's that was included in the speech by or in the words by Mr. Lolli. And I believe the legitimate question we need to ask of the superintendent. So, I move forward, and I wrote myself some notes that we asked for the issues specific to process. No names, process. And see whether or not we circumvent the process by the process. I think that's the only way we are actually going to put forth or restore credibility, if you will, because I believe that we're not credible as we try to defend ourselves without proof, if you will. So that's my statement.
I don't think we want to go through it. They're pending litigation, and I can't talk about it. And there are, I'm not going to say any more, because I can't speak about them here in the public meeting. There was another hand over here.
Actually, Lisa Rodgers, Monmouth Junction. I have a couple questions. First, I thank John Lolli for standing up here to have the courage to speak out. That takes a lot. I do have a comment after these three questions. To the budget, the average comparison that was presented, I'd like to know, do they include the state-run districts? Because if they do, then we don't have a true comparison to our district. If you're including state-run districts, the costs of those districts are substantial compared to ours. So I think it would be helpful for our town to know exactly what our costs are in comparison to equivalent towns, not all state, because that includes state-run districts. That needs to be separated. The second question I have is regarding Hat Tikva expansion in East Brunswick. There is a scheduled discussion, I believe. It may have happened. I haven't been following it because of the happenings in our town. But I want to know, they're supposedly hitting the districts with an expansion, including South Brunswick, North Brunswick, Highland Park, Monroe. And how is that going to hit our budget? And is our budget prepared to handle that? It's not 19 students. It's going to be a heck of a lot more if they pull from other districts. So how is this town and this budget going to handle that expansion if it happens? Thirdly, I sent a letter to Dr. Jellig and the Board of Ed regarding the presentation last meeting, regarding the financials, the funding of expenses beyond contractual obligations, and the 100% increase in professional development spend. I'd like to know when I can expect that response, because it directly relates to that budget. We only have a 4% wiggle room, and if we're spending money unnecessarily, even if it's only $10,000 for a kitchenette, I think that we need to relook at all of our money and how we're spending it. And lastly, given what Mr. Lolli has said, it greatly disturbs me with the comments that he made, and I hope several of you now have your questions resolved. Those that told us that we had rumors being spread, I hope answers were given. And lastly, I just have one statement to make, and that is do your job.
Which comparison is she talking about? On your email, Mr. Tonzini and I have been reviewing the questions and getting answers. I expect to have you a response this week, but we're going through, there were a lot of questions there, and we're trying to get, rather than give you an answer one at a time, we'd like to give you a single document with all the answers to your questions, and so we're trying to work through that. To be honest, there'll be some questions that are going to be difficult to answer because it has to do with somebody saying one thing, somebody saying another thing, and it's not always clear, but we'll do our best to get you an answer to your questions this week. As to the state averages, I don't know how those are computed. I don't know if Mr. Tonzini, whether we just get those from the state or...
I know what she's asking for. In some cases, the state-run districts are included. In the one case where I showed you, we were 15 out of 103 districts. K-12 similar size districts. Obviously, that wouldn't just be the state-run districts. It might be one or two in there, it depends. So I'd have to look at those a little closer. The state doesn't necessarily take those out when they do an average, so, but I can get comparable numbers.
Other questions? Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to speak tonight?
Good evening. I'm Lori Siemon, staff member housed at Black Horse Lane. Dr. Parker, I'd like to begin by saying I respect the rules you stated at the start of the meeting. On more than one occasion, I've expressed my opinions with this board. At the last meeting, comments were directed towards me and the comments that I made. Tonight, I wish to address them as I am under the impression that I am not making myself clear, and I would like to rectify that. I am of the opinion that publicly, this is my right. Dr. Parker, you stated that the board gets their information from one person only, the superintendent, which is the law. While I understand that, my concern is that after hearing untruths told in this open forum, how the parents, students, and staff are to feel confident that you are getting the information necessary in order to effectively do your job. The untruths I speak of are the statement that there is no kitchenette, which there clearly is. People can attempt to make it appear that it is something other than that. However, the plans submitted to the township clearly state kitchen. So if it's not a kitchenette, then the plans submitted to the township are inaccurate. The second untruth told pertains to the corrective action plan. Dr. Jellick's words are as follows. I am anxious, literally anxious, to share those plans with the public. We have not been given that they are indeed approved. As recently reported, the state does not approve the plans, they just collect them. Therefore, meeting after meeting, request after request, the parents were denied information unnecessarily. This causes, in my opinion, a loss of trust and faith between the board and the townspeople. Again, though, let me reiterate that the board can only obtain information from one individual, hence my fear for not only you, but the parents, the staff, and most especially the student population. Next, Dr. Parker and members of the board, I would like to clarify my comments regarding department administrative staff. Let me begin by saying that I am not and would not ask the board to make a staff member step. While their departures bring me great sadness and wonderment for what the future will hold, I know that the choice to leave is theirs and theirs alone. One board member understood me. I am asking the board to find out why these staff members are leaving. I find comfort in the fact that an exit interview process was suggested at the last meeting. After all, departures of this magnitude are rare and unusual. If this was the normal business practice, then there would never be continuity. This brings me to the comments made by Mr. Nathanson during board comment at the last meeting. Mr. Nathanson stated the following: when Dr. McCartney came, there were several people that left the district at that point. The people he listed were Willis Spicer, Jeffrey Scott, George Scott, John Heyman, John Longo, and Dave Kaplan, who is actually Dave Klein. With all due respect, Mr. Nathanson and Mr. St. Vincent, who concurred with him, I must correct you on those statements. Dr. McCartney arrived in the district on May 1st, 2004. Willis Spicer left the district July 1st, 2003. John Longo left the district September 1st, 2003, both prior to Dr. McCartney's arrival. Then in chronological order, the following left: Jeffrey Scott, December 1st, 2005. George Scott, July 1st, 2007. John Heyman, December 1st, 2007. And David Klein, October 1st, 2008. This means that Jeffrey Scott left 1 year, 9 months after Dr. McCartney's arrival, George Scott 3 years, 4 months after, John Heyman 3 years, 9 months, and Dave Klein 4 years, 7 months. Quite clearly, that situation is in no way comparative to what we are encountering now. These factual dates, which were Oprah requested by myself, paid for in full, do speak volumes when compared with present day, but not the volumes to which were inferred by Mr. St. Vincent. Since Dr. Jellick's arrival, we have lost Jennifer Disler, Joanne Kirkus, and we are losing Anthony Tonzini, John Bruff, and as was mentioned, more than likely Rick Cronin. This all comes within the first 2 years of Dr. Jellick's leadership. Next, I would like to address Mr. St. Vincent's comment that maybe the people leaving do not like the new constraints. Maybe Dr. Jellick is watching them more closely than they have been in the past. Maybe he's holding them to a new criteria. I don't know. In my opinion, Mr. St. Vincent, you're right. You don't know. Once this board does exit interviews, you will know. Until then, to suggest in any way, shape, or form that someone you've known for 22 months should be held in a higher esteem, who has not, in my opinion, proven himself to this board, the parents, the students, then the people who have been here far longer, is not only insulting, but embarrassing. Joanne Kirkus, Anthony Tonzini, Rick Cromie, Jennifer Disler, and John Bruff have spent years in this district, not only proving themselves to be dedicated, honest, hardworking, but they have proven themselves to be above reproach. They have held themselves accountable and have proven their loyalty to the district. To my knowledge, no one has come to a board meeting questioning their place within the district. They have instead spoke volumes of the loss they feel by their departures. Both Mr. Delgado's words regarding Mr. Tonzini and Mrs. Begg's words regarding Ms. Kirkus prove that these individuals have been held to the highest esteem and will be deeply missed. Finally, I leave you with my final opinion. To suggest that rumors are causing this district harm and serve no purpose, while it may be true to some extent, when some rumors are based in truth, while others are based in outright lies, it is time to investigate to determine reality from fiction. This is currently underway, for which I am grateful. However, for anyone to insinuate prior to its completion that the process is completed, that the person being investigated has been cleared, is an unacceptable falsification of the facts. Rumors should not define reality. Truth and facts should. So in closing, I ask each individual member of the board to leave their opinions, their loyalties, and their friendships outside the door. When you come together to review the facts presented before you, that you listen to the facts, the truth, and then you act accordingly. At the end of each day, we must all be held accountable for the choices we make, the good, the bad, the ugly. I respectively trust in the honor for which each member of this board holds themselves. I trust that when presented with the facts, this board will make the necessary measures to do what is right for this district. I trust that someday, we will be able to return to doing what is in the best interest of the students of this district, that the distractions will be replaced with real focus to the end goal, raising children to be the best they can be, to be productive members of society, and to achieve the goals beyond their wildest dreams. Thank you.
Let me just say that, the board hears what you say. We've heard all of the various comments from the community. But as I said, as we go and look at and evaluate actions of personnel, we can't talk about it in a public meeting. But we do hear you speak. And each and every one of you has a right to come here and speak your mind. And, we will hear you. Okay, and that's all I can tell you at this point. We hear what you're saying, but I can't get up in a public meeting and talk about what actions this board may or may not be taking. It would be a breach of my ethics as a board member to do so. Because while each of you, particularly all of you employees who are here, have a right to get up and speak, so does every employee have a right to some privacy. And I cannot break that. That's what the law says to me in my ethics, and I stand up and I take an oath to follow the laws of the United States of America and the state of New Jersey when I take office. So we do hear you. Even if you don't hear our response, we hear what you're saying. Dr. Jelly had a statement.
I hear you as well, quite painfully. I hear everything. I feel it quite personally. I would think that regardless of how you feel, any of you, there's an appreciation for that. On the issue of the people leaving, I have dealt with this most painfully because I like all of them. And they have made clear in many cases, in spite of the fact that some people don't want to respond to it that way, that it has nothing to do with me. Some of them I have very good relationships with. I wish all of them could have stayed longer. But they made choices. I bear whatever responsibility is mine. And as I said to the board, I'll be judged by what's next. I stand firmly behind every hire that I've made to date and have to continue to do well by that. But I hear all of this very personally and painfully. With regards to the caps, if there's an allowance for newness and humanity and sort of, basic error, I asked multiple people for advice on caps. I think we should all be clear that Park was brand new. Corrective action plan for low participation was brand new. None of us had any experience with that. And it is absolutely anathema to the way the state and county behave to suggest they would simply take your plans and say, that's all we need, you can release them to the public. Everything we give, typically, to the state and county is reviewed, and the advice I was given by multiple people was, do not release those yet. As soon as I heard that they were to be released, which was a couple weeks after the request, I released them. And you all now know what our schools did. It would appear quite successfully to increase participation in the test. But that's a mistake, and it's a human error. To suggest that there's malice behind it, I think, is a bit of a stretch. Those plans prove what we've been talking about here, which is the great pains we're all going to give students the best experiences. So amidst everything else, I can see why it's depicted that way, but it did me no good, then or now, to misrepresent what was happening with those results. I waited to be told it was okay. The moment I released them. And I apologize for the delay.
Do we have any other speakers tonight?
Good evening, board members, Dr. Parker. I'd like to address you once again. My name is Lois Jones. I'm from Dean's. And I had written some comments down that I intended, that I wanted to speak about tonight. But after hearing Lori, I really feel compelled to piggyback on a lot of things that she said. I've listened to Lori Siemon stand before this board and pour out her heartfelt concerns. I've listened to her once, I've listened to her twice, and tonight makes 3 times that this woman has stood up before this board. I don't know Lori. I just really met her after the last board meeting, but I have to tell you that she does have my attention. And hopefully, and from what you're saying, I think that now she has your attention. In the past meeting, she's been visibly upset, especially about the key departures of positions of people in our board office. And I'm sure a good portion of our community shares those same concerns. I guess I have all these things that come into my head, but I have these phrases that pop in. Last time it was enough is enough. I'm not going to do that one again, but this phrase has been popping into my head, and it's the space between the notes that makes the music. Any logical-minded person understands that people have the right to leave. They have the right to retire. And if someone wants to go, we understand that you can't stop them. And I know we've been over this issue. But I think what we're trying to say is that the real issue here is the why and the why now. And it's been stated several times, and it's not unusual. You've said it's not unusual that people leave and retire. That's the right. The timing of these key departures in this year, in this district, in our board office, I think is unusual and a bit suspect. I'm getting a sense, and perhaps I'm all wrong, and I hope that I am, but on several issues that have been discussed here, I'm getting the sense that the board is divided on how to be unified to move forward on a lot of different issues. It's just my perception. My question to you tonight is twofold. As elected members of this board, are you prepared to be unified in planning to conduct a thorough investigation to note the reasons for the why? And secondly, are you preparing to move forward with a reasonable succession plan? Are you planning on doing that? All of these issues are in your hands. I appreciate the commitment that each of you have taken on to become board members and the work for the budget that was presented to us tonight. And I think we all understand the commitment that you made. But all of these issues are in your hands, and we just want you to do what's right. I thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening.
Again, thank you for your comments, and this board, we do work to be unified. We're not always unified. Sometimes we have disagreements, but we try to work them out. We try to come to consensus, and we try to move forward. Again, not everything that this board does and actions that we take are visible in this public meeting, but we do try to work together. As I said, we hear what's going on, and we're working the best we can to resolve things. Another speaker.
Good evening, Lee Blankstein Dayton. First, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Tanzini on his last budget. I think he does a wonderful job. And you know what? We're gonna miss him. And we're gonna miss his speech and everything else. And I don't think he's replaceable. We'll never find anybody like him again. So, thank you again. Okay. I got something just to read. Give me a moment. Get it? Okay. I want to know about the investigation, what is being investigated, why, when did it start, what is this investigation about, and I would hope the board ensures a thorough and complete investigation, and when will details be released to the public? And I also want to know why the board attorney is sitting right here in the front, and I'd like to know that now, but with the investigation, when do you think we'll be able to know what's going on?
I can neither deny nor confirm any investigation is going on. I told you, I cannot talk about personnel in a public meeting, and you can ask all the questions you want, but I cannot answer them.